Hello, dear woman of faith and precious daughter of God. If you have been longing for a tender, loving, emotionally intimate marriage again, if you have been praying for your husband to change so that you can feel close to him again, if you've been really missing the man who once pursued you, cherished you, held you, listened to your heart, and made you feel precious, then this message is for you. Because I want to share something with you that may completely change the way that you see your marriage. And at first, it might surprise you. You do not have a husband problem. Your husband is not too broken or flawed. The real issue is you stopped feeling safe trusting him. Okay? There's a trust problem. Now, before you click away, hear me out. I am not saying your husband is perfect. I am not saying he hasn't disappointed you. I'm not saying that he hasn't made real mistakes. In fact, I believe the opposite. I believe there probably was a moment, or maybe many moments in your marriage, where he let you down. Maybe it was an issue about money. Maybe it was about parenting. Maybe it was about emotional support or his spiritual leadership or something that was very important and dear to your heart. And after enough disappointments, something shifted inside of your heart. Okay. And it's not because you're mean or a bad wife or anything, but because you were hurt. You were hurt. And you stopped feeling safe trusting him. You stopped looking at him the same way you did when you first fell in love. And without realizing it, that changed the way that you started showing up with him. Now, at first, this felt really reasonable, okay? Because you thought, like, if he could just work on himself, if he could just communicate better, if he could just be more emotionally present, if he could just understand me, if he could just work on the issues from his childhood, so he's not triggered all the time, if he could just be better with money or be a better dad to the kids, then we'd finally have the marriage that I always wanted, right? So you're thinking he needs to work on himself so that he can finally become the man that you need him to be. Okay, so what do? You start having these conversations with him. And maybe you start having them at home, maybe you've had them in front of a counselor. They're conversations about what needs to change, conversations about what is not working, conversations about where he's failing, okay, where he's falling short, conversations about what he needs to improve, okay, on whatever the particular issue is. Now, you tell me, how did that conversation work out? Did your husband suddenly, become like super loving and attentive? Did he immediately, become like so tender and responsive to you, so connected? Or, was he like, sure, honey, like I'll just get right on that? Okay. Probably not. Okay. What happened? Instead, he got defensive, he got angry, and he became withdrawn. He got really quiet. He shut down completely. And then his reaction to you, that negative reaction, convinced you even more that he has a problem. Okay, so you think to yourself, see, I try to explain this to him, but he doesn't listen. He doesn't get it. Like, he actually really does need to work on these issues, but he just doesn't see it. Okay, so now you feel even more hurt, more neglected, more frustrated and lonely. Okay, he feels hurt. He's not talking to you. He's frustrated. And this cycle just continues. But what if I told you something that could literally change everything? What if the real issue is not that your husband is too broken to love you well? What if the real issue is he no longer feels your trust in him? Because men experience love very differently than women. Okay, as women, we feel loved when we're cherished. When we feel seen, when we feel understood, when a man sees our beauty and pursues us. Okay, that's not how men feel loved at all. Men feel loved when they feel respected, when they feel admired, when they feel like you trust him, you believe in him, right? When your message to him is like, I believe in you, I trust that you're completely capable of handling this. That's how he feels loved. But after years of disappointment, you've, unintentionally stopped sending that message. Okay? Not because you were trying to be mean, but because you were hurt. Right? And now you're trying to get him to improve in order to protect your heart, okay? Or your kids' hearts, or something that has to do with your marriage, your finances, whatever it is, okay? You're telling him he needs to improve because you don't want to be hurt, okay? And I understand that. But the problem is, the very thing that you're doing right now to create more connection, to try to fix the relationship, is exactly what's causing the distance. It's creating more distance in the relationship. Because the more you try to improve him, the more you're telling him you're inadequate. Okay, and the less loved he feels, and the more hurt he feels. Okay, and that's why he gets angry and upset. That's why he reacts in such a strong and upsetting way. Okay, because the less admired he feels, the more he withdraws. Because the message he's hearing from you is you're inadequate. Okay, and this is the opposite of what moves a man's heart to be your hero. Okay, that message is wounding to him. Then nothing changes at all in your relationship, and you start to feel even more hurt and lonely. You start to feel like this is hopeless. He doesn't get it. And then the cycle just gets worse. And this is why so many smart, loving women feel stuck and hopeless in their marriage, right? They're trying harder than ever, yet they're getting less and less of what they desire. Now, I want you to imagine something. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, and before he reaches for his phone, he reaches for you. Imagine him pulling you close. Imagine feeling wanted and desired again. Imagine standing in the kitchen later that evening and just feeling his arms slide around your waist as he walks by. Imagine bringing something to him that's just been completely weighing on your heart, but instead of becoming defensive, he leans in. He listens. He understands. He gets it. And he's like, hey, tell me more. Okay, imagine, you're sitting together on the couch after a long day and he's got his arm around your shoulders and you just feel totally taken care of, totally safe, connected, and cherished. And it's not because you forced him to change, not because finally you convinced him, not because you're managing all of his emotions, but because you inspired his heart again. Because that is exactly what I have seen happen for hundreds of women, okay? And here's the beautiful part. The woman who attracted her husband in the very beginning of their relationship already knew how to do this. She already knew. It wasn't that you didn't know the right skills. You already knew. You already did it. When you first fell in love with your husband, notice what you weren't doing. You weren't trying to improve him. You weren't trying to fix him. You weren't telling him, oh, you need to go work on your childhood wounds. Oh, you need to get better at this. You're not good enough. You weren't constantly evaluating him. You saw something wonderful in him, something admirable, something capable, something worthy of your trust. And when he saw that reflected in your eyes, he came alive. He pursued you. He delighted you. He wanted to go out of his way to make you smile. He wanted to make you happy, right? Because he wants to be your hero. And the good news is that woman is still inside of you, right? She is you. You are that beautiful, capable, magnetic woman, okay? And you haven't disappeared. But you've been buried underneath these years of hurt and disappointment. But when you learn how to step into your feminine magnetism again, something remarkable happens. Your husband will begin responding to you completely differently, right? Not because you've manipulated him, not because you're being controlling, but because you've changed the message that he experiences from you. The message is no longer, you're not enough, you're not doing this right, I can't believe you did this. Okay, you need to do this, this, and this to change. And I'm not going to I may not wait for you to change, but you need to. Okay. The message becomes, I believe in you. I trust you. I respect you. Like, I feel like you've totally got this, right? I completely trust your judgment, right? And that touches your husband's heart. And that changes everything. Okay. And that's exactly what happened for Christine. So for years, she believed that the solution to her marriage struggle was getting her husband to change, like getting him to finally see it, And she tried having conversations with him. She tried explaining, right? She, took him to couples counseling. She tried to get him to understand, how much she was hurting. And the harder she worked to try to improve the relationship by telling him, here's what you need to do to change, the more distant he became. Okay, think about your relationship. Is that the experience that you're having? Yeah, it is, right? And she was exhausted. She was lonely. She was discouraged. And she was very seriously considering divorce. Okay. And it wasn't because she didn't love him, it's because she lost hope, right? She lost hope that anything would ever be better for her. But when we started working together, I showed her something that she hadn't ever seen before. Okay. I showed her the blind spot. Okay. And it's not that her husband was perfect, and it's not that her pain wasn't real, because it was. Okay. But it was that her approach to getting his love was actually pushing away that love, right? Can you imagine that? Like, the very thing you're trying to do to create that connection is also creating the distance. It's so frustrating, right? It's so frustrating. But once she saw it, everything changed. Okay. And here's what she said, quote, I blamed him for years. I even threatened divorce, but I never saw any real change on his part, even when we went to couples counseling. And I really liked our counselor. After working with you, Irene, my marriage completely changed. You challenged me and showed me how to love my husband and to be loved by him. Now my husband listens carefully to my needs. He seeks me out with affection. I feel support for my desires. He puts his arm around me when we sit together. He even calls me his bride. We are happy together. My family is intact. You were such a light in my life, Irene. End quote. And now they're visiting their grandbabies and having a beautiful time together. So I want you to notice something. Christine finally stopped trying to change her husband. Okay, instead, she changed the way that she showed up in the relationship with him. Okay, and when she did, something beautiful happened. Her husband started changing his response completely on his own. Okay, it wasn't because she pressured him. It wasn't because she convinced him. It's not because she criticized him into just finally becoming a better man or the man that she needed, but because she finally touched his heart in a way that made it open. Okay, and that's what needs to happen, right? And once that happens, he naturally began moving toward her, right? And this is something that I have seen over and over and over again. Okay, right now, you are insisting to your husband that he needs to change, right? And you probably have a lot of evidence to support that, okay? And I hear you, okay? I worked with so many women, like, I get it, believe me, okay? But sending him this underlying message, you are inadequate as you are right now, and you need to change, will never give you the tender, loving, emotionally intimate relationship that you desire, because it is not what moves your husband's heart. Because what's needed is something much deeper. And that begins with understanding a very simple truth. Men move towards admiration. They move away from criticism. Now, like, this is like, for us as women, we feel like we're just having honest conversations, but that's not how it is for a man. Okay, I've interviewed so many men and they all tell me the same thing, right? With the criticism, they just shut down. okay, because it makes them feel like they're failing the most important person in their life. Okay, that's not the message that inspires, right? And just as we as women, we blossom when we're pursued, right? When we feel cherished. Men flourish when they feel your respect. Okay, now maybe you feel like, oh, I am being respectful. Okay, but if you're telling him the message, you need to change, that's not respectful. That's not how he hears it. Okay, but the moment you see this, the moment you understand this, your entire relationship not only is going to change, but you're going to look back on it and it's like everything's going to start to make sense. Like suddenly all of his defensiveness makes sense. His withdrawal makes sense. His shutdowns make sense, okay? Not because I'm saying that's a healthy thing to do, okay? But because you finally see like he feels hurt, okay? That underneath that behavior, right? Which is, a hurtful behavior to you, you feel hurt by that and neglected, okay? It's because he also feels hurt and he's moving away to protect his heart. Now, let me be clear. This does not mean like you ignore the problems. Okay, this does not mean don't share your needs. Okay, we're not talking about becoming a doormat. Okay, absolutely not. In fact, the women in my program become more effective at getting their needs met than ever before. Okay, why? Because they know how to touch their man's heart. It's very simple, right? The difference is they stop communicating their disappointment, right? This is what we've all been taught. This is what we all grow up with, right? And they start communicating from a place of connection, right? A place from their feminine magnetism that arouses in their husband that attractive masculine response. Okay, they have finally stopped trying so hard to improve their husbands, right? And instead, they just inspire. They inspire him. And that's when things change, okay? Because your husband doesn't want to feel managed. He wants to feel that you trust him. He doesn't want to feel evaluated. Okay, by the way, that's why might be your situation, why many husbands actually resist going to counseling, right? Because he's just going to be evaluated. Okay, that's not what moves his heart, that actually offends him. Okay, he wants to feel that you believe in him, that you believe he has what it takes to be the hero for your heart. That's the message that moves him. When you send that, he will change and you will see a very different husband in response to you. Okay, why? Because when he feels that from you, something powerful wakes up inside him. That same part of him that pursued you, that same part of him that just made him want to go out of his way to make you smile, that same part of him that wanted to protect you, to provide for you, to support you, to make you feel cherished, to love you, to delight in you. That's what wakes up when you change your message to him. Now, I want to share something that deeply influenced my understanding of marriage. Okay, for nearly 20 years as a professor, I have taught the writings of Saint John Paul II. Okay, and here's the interesting thing. One of the things that he observed repeatedly was this pattern. A wife starts to become disappointed in her husband, okay? Understandably disappointed, like he failed in some respect, okay? He made mistakes, he falls short, okay? And gradually, the wife begins withdrawing her trust, okay? And not because she's bad, but because she feels hurt, right? You felt hurt. But once that trust is withdrawn, her entire way of relating to her husband changes. She starts focusing on what he's doing wrong, on what he needs to improve, on what he needs to fix. And unknowingly, she begins communicating a message that wounds his heart. Okay, and John Paul saw this happen in real marriages. He wrote about it. Okay, and he also saw something extraordinary. When a wife restored that trust, that respect, that belief, like you've got it, like you're capable, that belief in her husband, the husbands rise. They rise to become the very thing that their wives had been longing for all along, right? Not perfectly, right? But genuinely. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching this work, because I know what's possible and I've seen marriages transformed. I've seen women go from lonely, discouraged, feeling hopeless to being pursued and cherished all over again in their marriage, just like the way they were when they first fell in love. I've seen the husbands go from being withdrawn and defensive to affectionate and attentive. And I've seen relationships that looked hopeless become joyful again. And perhaps most importantly, I've seen families stay together, right? Children grow up with loving parents, parents who love each other, and couples rediscover the friendship and affection that they thought was gone forever. Because the truth is this: you married a great man, right? Because you're super smart and loving and kind, right? You married a great man, not a perfect man, okay? But a really, really good man, because you are smart and intelligent and thoughtful and loving, and you chose him for a reason. There was something in him that you admired, something in him that captured your heart. And the problem is not that that disappeared, but that the hurt you felt, the disappointment in him, has made it difficult for you to see it. But when you learn how to restore that vision, everything begins to shift. Everything changes. And this is why I created the Adored for Life program. Inside, I walk you through a step-by-step process for restoring emotional safety, for rebuilding connection, and inspiring the kind of tender, emotional, intimate love that you've been longing for. Okay, and here's how we do it. We focus on 3 core phases. All right, step 1, restore emotional safety. Because intimacy cannot flourish when spouses feel threatened, criticized, unsafe. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, to respect how your husband feels loved. It's very different from the way you do, right? You learn the exact shifts, phrases, frameworks that awaken his desire to connect, pursue, protect you, support you, and make you feel cherished. And phase 3 is to receive his tenderness and enjoy emotional intimacy, right? And this is where women begin to experience the very thing that they've wanted all along, the very thing that they've been telling him, right? More affection, connection, understanding, emotional awareness, and closeness, okay? And the stories that have come out of this process are like just truly remarkable. Okay, here's another client. Quote, every time I brought up an issue, my husband would shut down for days. Within 2 weeks of applying this, he was listening, hearing me, and taking action, end quote. Another client, we couldn't talk about anything important without it turning into a fight. Now we don't fight at all. We follow the framework and we both get our needs met, end quote. I feel like I have my husband back, end quote. My husband looked at me this morning and said, I just love you like this. Our marriage finally feels like what a marriage should be, end quote. And he kissed me. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine hearing those words from your husband? Can you imagine feeling his affection for you again? Parenting together as a team? Imagine waking up a few weeks from now and just feeling lighter, hopeful, connected. Imagine him reaching for your hand in the car. Isn't that great, the handhold? I just love that. You know, imagine him kissing you so sweetly on the forehead, putting his arm around you at church, looking for reasons to spend more time with you, feeling secure in your marriage again, feeling adored as a woman, feeling chosen, feeling loved. That future is available to you, but it requires a very different message to his heart than the one you've been giving him so far. You don't need to insist that he change. You don't need to manipulate. You simply need to reconnect with the powerful woman who inspired his love in the first place, with your feminine magnetism, right? And I can show you how to do exactly that. So if you're ready to stop walking on eggshells, ready to stop feeling lonely in your marriage, ready to restore the tenderness, affection, emotional intimacy that you have been longing for, then click the button below and join today. Okay, because you deserve to be pursued. You deserve to feel cherished. You deserve to feel emotionally connected to the man who pledged his life and his heart to you. And you deserve to experience the beautiful marriage that God intended for you. I'll see you inside.